Welcome to the St. Peter's Church in Leuven. This is a magnificent church. It has been recently restored, and so we were able to present this masterpiece in a completely new setting. And this, what you see here behind me, is the Last Supper of Dieric Bouts. This painting was made for the city of Leuven in 1464. It was finished in 1468. And it was made specifically for this chapel in this city. And it's important to know that because to understand this painting, you really need to understand what Leuven was about in the 15th century. Now, what happened here in the city? We had a new university, and of course that brought an enormous intellectual potential to the city. But also we had something like the moderne devotie, devotia moderna. And thirdly, you had the influence of the early humanistic thought. The ideas of Italy came to Leuven through the university, but also through the major abbeys like the Abbey of the Park. So you have this innovative city with a lot of culture and intellectual wildlife here in this town. Now, the people who commissioned this painting, that was not one person, it was a brotherhood, the Brotherhood of the Holy Sacrament. Let's say a group of very wealthy people from the city who believed in the philosophy of the moderne devotie, and they wanted to embellish their chapel with a masterpiece. And so they commissioned Dieric Bouts to paint the Last Supper. For the iconography, we're still quite lucky we have the contents of the contract made between Bouts and the Brotherhood of the Holy Sacrament. And in that contract was stipulated that two professors of the university would assist Bouts in order to create this elaborate iconography. The central panel, you see the installment of the most sacred sacrament, the Last Supper. And you see Jesus Christ with all his apostles around him. And then it's all set in a contemporary Leuven interior. This is a scene of the New Testament, but it was already pre-visioned in the Old Testament. And that's what you see on the four panels on the other side. You see, for instance, Abraham and Melchizedek. Down there, you see the scene depicting the Jews and they're having their last meal the night before they will flee from Egypt. They hold their walking sticks already in their hands. You see over there the collection of manna in the desert from Exodus, and down here you see Joseph and the angel, also a prediction of what happens in the New Testament during the Last Supper. At that time, the iconography of the Last Supper was mostly used in smaller versions. This is one of the first times that this iconography is used on a large public scale. Very striking for this painting is the use of perspective. The center of the painting is not a vantage point, but it's the hand of Christ, logically, because that's the essence of the painting. But the vantage point for the perspective situates itself above the head of Christ. So we have a much steeper kind of room, a much more elaborate kind of perspective. This creates a very odd feeling, a feeling of reality, the feeling of a virtual space behind the surface of the painting. And it was the first time that this kind of perspective was used on such a large composition north of the Alps. The 16th century Flemish humanist Lampsonius credited Bouts with the invention of the landscape. In reality, that's not true. Landscapes were already painted long before Dieric Bouts. But what Dieric Bouts does, he incorporates all the innovations about landscapes in one kind of style. And that style is really designed to create depth, to create movement in the painting. If you look at this one, for instance, you see all the different color schemes, but you also see something that would guide your eyes towards the end. A very old thing about these kind of landscapes is that we are in Leuven, and the surroundings of Leuven are rather flat. I mean, there's not much going on. But if you look at these landscapes, you see mountains, you see the Alps in the end, you see beautiful rock formations, you see exotic trees, something that a normal person from this city would never see in his life. It's not a very far stretch to imagine that these kinds of landscapes would be a bit the same like if today we look at Star Wars and see a planet far, far away. It would have been a bit the same thing. As curator of the Museum Leuven, I've been studying Bouts for quite a long time, and I ask myself the question quite often, why do we still look at Dieric Bouts? I think I scratched the surface a bit, because this painting is the beginning of something new. It's the use of perspective, the color schemes of Van Eyck, the depiction of it all, the iconography. It's the start of a new era in the art of the Low Countries. Also, we know quite a lot of this thing. We know why it was made, we know for whom it was made, we still have the contract. So it becomes a very well documented piece, which is still hanging in its original chapel. So all these kind of things together, would give this painting a particular place in the history of Flemish and Dutch art.